Hello, and welcome into the Boilermaker Lounge. I am Sam Sprunger, joined by Grant Flora, and today we are joined by SI's Dustin Schutte, not Justin. Oh, geez, Dustin Schutte. Gentlemen, how are we this fine Friday?
We're doing good. Yeah, ready to talk about we got a lot of new stuff today.
Yeah, and it's not any recruiting stuff, Dustin.
No, not yet. That's been most of the summer, though.
It has, and the crazy thing about that is it's ever changing. Like it could happen. Like we could be doing this show, and all of a sudden something breaks, and we won't know it until we sign off, or if we do, we'll break it right here.
There we go.
So I need to apologize. I'm still getting over the cold, so if I start coughing, gentlemen, take over. Last week, Grant and I, we were talking. We had so much going on that we didn't talk about the schedule coming out. Finally, the Big Ten schedule, the days that it's happening, the dates are finalized. So Purdue has a complete schedule. They start off obviously with the exhibition against Kentucky. Then they've got their preseason stuff. But Rutgers on December 2nd, Dustin, in Piscataway, Purdue has to start the Big Ten season with a place that's probably they've been the most snake bitten in a long time.
Yeah, well, even when they're really good, and Rutgers, like even last year, it was a dogfight. What was it, like 48-42, or maybe it was 50? It was a low-scoring game.
Maybe it was very low
scoring. But it always seems to be a really tight game. They give you fits. You know what's funny about that is I asked for bold predictions at some point over the summer, I think maybe for a mailbag or something. Mm-hmm. And somebody responded with, we're going to win our first Big Ten road game in December. And so I'm like, well, of course they would end up getting Rutgers in that situation, because we remember a few years ago, like Purdue went up there a few days after they were ranked number 1 and got beat at the buzzer by that Ron Harper shot it from half court. Yes. Then a couple years ago, they got beat at home on a late Cam Spencer 3. They've just, whether it's been on the road or at home, they just bring even when they're not good, they're just a physically tough team to play.
Yeah, and
I was at that Cam Spencer game when he made that shot on him. I couldn't. It was a great game. Like the atmosphere was great, but it just the whole time you knew that Rutgers shouldn't even be in the game. And then Fletch hit a shot that I think set the new decibel record at Mackey when he made that shot to put Purdue up by like 1 point. And then Spencer comes down and hits that shot to basically give Rutgers the win. And it was wild. But yeah, like you said, Rutgers they always find ways to stay in games, and then it gets unpredictable at the end.
Well, I'm looking at the schedule. The second game that the Boilers play on their Big Ten, it's they started doing that unusual where they put 2 conference games in the middle of the non-con schedule. They host then Minnesota on the 10th, and that's in between the Iowa State and Marquette games. All 3 of those games are at home, but that's. Do either of these first 2 games that before the actual conference slate starts, to where it's always you're playing a conference game, either of these 2 games really a big, huge concern when it comes to the grand scheme of things with Purdue?
I think personally, if you looked at these matchups on paper, I don't probably think that they're a big reason for concern, but I think fans are going to be concerned knowing Purdue's history with losing, the first Big Ten road game. By the way, it always seems like they start the Big Ten season on the road, doesn't it, in December?
Yeah, it does.
I don't know if that's factually accurate. It just seems like it. I don't think so, but I think there's going to be some concern for that Rutgers game because of the past history, because of the way they play a physically tough brand of basketball. But you know what? They kind of have the counterpunch to that. I think they're going to have an Oscar Clough. Like they just need somebody that goes in and gets dirty and scrappy, and I think he will probably serve that. So it may not be as concerning. And I think Minnesota, if you put that game, I'd give Purdue a 98% chance to win, but the Nico Medved factor and kind of just not knowing what to expect, I think will maybe give you some, I don't want to say nervous energy, but just an unexpected, what can we expect from Minnesota?
Great.
Yeah, well, I agree. Like on paper, I think it's a pretty good way to start the conference.
I agree.
It's just like you said with the Rutgers situation, you never know what to expect there. And Minnesota, like while they might be unpredictable, having them at home is huge. Like I just don't see Purdue dropping that game at home. So it's nice to get a couple weaker Big Ten teams, if you will, compared to the contenders that people are talking about right now, to start. But definitely going on the road to Rutgers, especially because it's just a little further away, like, and only your second true road game at the time, and it's a conference game. That's going to be an interesting test, regardless of how good Rutgers ends up being, simply because you have to travel, you have to go on the road when it's only your second time being truly on the road. First time, it will have been like a month since they played the other one. So it's just those early road games are always even a little more tough than kind of the later ones. So that Rutgers game has got to be a concern.
Does the fact that Minnesota falls in between two games that are kind of not marquee matchups, because you're not 100% sure what those two teams, Iowa State and Marquette, are going to look like, but do you look at that as potentially an overlooked game, or is this team pretty strong to where they're not going to overlook a team like Minnesota, which you don't know what you're going to get from them, and Minnesota is always one of those sneaky teams that even if they're not the greatest in the world, they can come up and bite you. Is this potentially a trap game for them?
Yeah, let me be honest. I don't know that there's a trap game for Purdue, just because I think they're so laser focused. Now, that's not to say they can't trip up somewhere.
Sure.
But I don't know that I would use the word trap game, because I think they legitimately know what's at stake every single game. And if anybody is taking that game lightly, like, this is the beauty of having a roster that can go basically 12 deep, right? You can bring somebody off the bench and say, hey, if Oscar Clough isn't locked in, we're going to bring in Daniel Jacobson. He's going to get 25 minutes. Or if I don't know, if Fletch is for whatever reason struggling, we can bring in Liam Murphy, we can bring in Jack Benner, we can bring in Jakari Harris or CJ, whoever it might be. So I'm not super concerned with that game as much. I think for the big reason that Grant said that it's at home, and all three of those games are at home. So It's not like you have to do a lot of travel back and forth where it could catch you off guard a little bit. I think having all three of those games at home is huge.
I also if this were a year or two ago when Iowa State and Marquette were both like top 10 teams and huge contenders, I think you could definitely make that argument. As right now, it looks like they're both going to take a step back from what they have been, and they might still be ranked in the top 25 by this point. But as of right now, it seems like they're not going to be the heavyweights that they've been in the past. To me, that makes it a little bit better as far as not being trapped by Minnesota and not overlooking Minnesota, because those two maybe aren't quite the marquee matchups they would be if this were, a year or two ago. But at the same time, they're definitely they're looked upon as important games for sure.
Sure.
But just not quite the same.
I'll add one more thing to this. I think if maybe this was the first time Purdue was going through that sort of stretch, but they'll play, we all know they have the exhibition game against Kentucky, which that's not, obviously doesn't count for anything, but it's still a big time matchup. A lot of people, There's going to be a lot of energy in the building. Evansville, Oakland, then they have to go at Alabama. Then they come back to play Akron. Then they do that Baja Mar Challenge where they'll play two pretty good teams in that. So they're going to have those situations where they're going from really good team to average or below average team. And so I think that they'll probably be adjusted to that level of competition and having to, I don't want to say switch gears, because you'd like to think this team's going to play at the same level every single night, but I think you know what I mean.
Yeah. Well, there's different, you're going to prep to play your best game, but there's still different levels of prep at the same time. Right. Grant, I thought you looked like Grant. You looked like you were going to say something. That's why I stopped.
No, it's just kind of like you said, more along the same lines. Like this Purdue team has been playing big time non-conference schedules for like several years now.
Right.
Braden Smith and Fletcher Loyer have been doing it since day one. So looking at that stretch, like they have gone through so much more than 3 home games against 3 teams that they should be in control of, all 3 of them, just based on where they're supposed to be at preseason, where these other teams are coming in. So while, yeah, I think we make a good point, it's a concerning week potentially just because you've got 3 high major opponents, and it's just going to be a stretch of consistent quality opponents. I think this Purdue team, of all teams, should be able to handle it better than anything else.
Well, shoot, and then after that 3-game stretch at home, they go to Indianapolis to play Auburn. And Auburn, going through their coaching change, here just recently, they're taking a little bit of a step back, but Auburn's still one, too, that you've got to sit there and think, historically, they've been good the past few years. That's a game that you've got to kind of, be ready and not to overlook as well, even with that change. Let's look at the next where you actually get into the Big Ten schedule. Purdue starts with a game, and then after all the non-cons are done, they go to Wisconsin. Then they come home, play 3 games at home, Washington, Penn State, Iowa. Then they go out west. We saw Michigan State last year playing top of the game. They go out west, and they get beat both games that they play in Los Angeles. I'm not saying, oh my goodness, are we going to lose both games? But my concern is the trip back. What happens after they come back out of the West? How concerned? I mean, you get Illinois, but then you've got to go to IU and to Maryland after that.
Yeah, that's easily the 5-game stretch that I had circled on that because of the reasons that you just said. Because you've got to go across the country. UCLA is a team that I think a lot of people think will be near the top of the Big Ten. Illinois is always very competitive. That's always been a tough game for Purdue. And then obviously rivalry game with Indiana. And then you got to go and play Buzz Williams, right? At College Park. So yeah, this is, it's a brutal stretch, but if you want to talk about seeing what your, championship level DNA is made of, I mean, you're going to find it out. I honestly think people probably aren't going to hear this because I know people are lunatics. And so if Purdue doesn't go 40-0 or whatever, it's going to be a disappointing season. I honestly think if Purdue gets through that stretch 3-2, they're going to win the Big Ten by probably 3 or 4 games because that is without question the most difficult stretch. And so if you can get through that against 5, what we expect to be pretty good opponents and having to travel that much, if you go 3-2 in that stretch, whew.
And after Maryland, you got to come home and play Oregon, who's not going to be a pushover either.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say that's just it. There's no games you can take off in the Big Ten. We've been saying this for years, and yet this year, I think even more than ever, like you can't just look ahead and say like, oh, if we get through these 2 games, there's a team we're going to blow out by 30. Like you said, they get through that 5-game stretch, then you play Oregon. And Oregon has their 2 best players back from last year, a team that was a solid Big Ten team. So you just, once you hit those tough stretches, it's tough to then recover and get back from it. And you look at the West Coast stretch, I think you compare it to last year. Last year, they went out, and obviously it was a concern because they were going to have to play in the West for a week, and how are they going to adjust? They played Washington first, who ended up being bottom 3 in the Big Ten.
Yeah.
And then they played Oregon, who was seen as very good at the time and had a good season, but I don't think they were as good as what people thought they were when Purdue played them. And so it ended up being a game they really should have won, which they did. This year, you've got UCLA, like you said, top of the Big Ten, and then USC, who is definitely going to be a quality team. I think has a potential to be better than what people even are looking at right now. You got Chad Baker-Mazzara that transferred in there. They just have been able to put together a decent roster. I think those 2 games are just going to be more challenging overall than what they were last year out west. You have to handle that and then come back. To me, it makes it a little bit tougher than what it was last year. And last year, they dropped the game after they came back.
So the thing I would say is I'm less concerned about the Oregon game because they didn't have, I believe when they came back and played Ohio State, they only had, I don't remember if it was 2 days or 3 days. When they come back, they've got 6 days. So they can get back. They won't have to deal with the jet lag. But to Grant's point about not having a night off, then what happens? and I don't want to get too far ahead here, then you got to go on the road and play Nebraska, which a lot of people,
Iowa.
Jon Rothstein has them as one of his top 45 teams on the NCAA bubble. They have Rank Mass back, who's a really good forward. I think, again, that's another game on paper that I think Purdue probably wins pretty comfortably, but we saw a few years ago, Purdue had a superior team and got waxed by Nebraska.
Yeah.
And then you go and play what I think might be the best point guard matchup in the Big Ten, if not number one. Well, Donovan Dent and Braden Smith might be number one, but Bennett Sturtz is certainly in that conversation.
Yeah.
So you've got 6 road games in an 8-game stretch. And it's not like you're going to Penn State, or I don't want to throw Northwestern because they have obviously won, but I can't even think of who else would you throw in there. I mean, at Washington, maybe. I don't think Washington's going to be that good.
Yeah.
So it's not; these aren't cakewalk games if you're not playing at the highest level. But this is where I think that Purdue's depth is going to be a huge advantage to them, and the fact that Braden Smith doesn't have to play 40 minutes every game.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I think that this type of stretch where you got to go on the road and constantly be at your best if you want to come out with a win, that's where I think that's really going to help them.
So you talked about that 6 away games in a 8-game stretch. You play Illinois, Oregon in that stretch at home. After you go to Nebraska, after you go to Iowa, hey, you get a reprieve. You come home, you play Michigan, Indiana, and Michigan State. What in the world? And don't get me wrong, this is probably the best year to have this schedule for the Boilermakers. Absolutely, in my mind, the best year because of what Purdue has on their roster. The ability to run 12 deep. But my goodness, I mean, like we just talked about, coming home from coming off of the West Coast and coming back and playing, Illinois, IU, Maryland, and then hey, you get to play Oregon at home. Then you go to Nebraska, Iowa. Then it gets worse. It just gets worse.
Yeah, I want Grant to chime in on this because I have a comparison I'd like to draw, and I don't know if Grant will remember this, but I know Sam will.
Well, I'll tell you what. My thoughts when you're saying this is, yes, this is definitely, if Purdue's going to have a tough schedule like this, the year to have it is when they have the best team that they have. The other thing is, this schedule could be so much worse because they play Michigan at home. They don't have to go to Chrysler. They don't have to go to the Breslin Center. They get Wisconsin at home at least once. I know they have to play them twice, but at least they get them at home once. A lot of the best teams in the Big Ten, they only have to play at home. Like UCLA is the big road game that they have that they don't have to really go anywhere else to those top teams. They get Illinois at home. So this schedule could be even worse than it is, and yet we're still talking about it like it's just going to be an absolute grind, which it is because the Big Ten's that tough. And so, yeah, they come back. They have Michigan, Indiana, Michigan State all at home, and then you go back to Ohio State, which that is not going to be an easy game. Ohio State's going to have a good roster this year. But, yeah, it's such a tough schedule, but at the same time, it could be so much worse because you could have to go to Chrysler and you could have to go to the Breslin Center. And so, yeah, it's just such a grind, but I just thought we should take note of that. That literally,
you're right.
They have probably 2 or 3 of the top teams in the Big Ten at their home place, and they don't have to travel.
And when they do come back, like they do, like I said, when they make that trip back from Maryland after the long, I mean, they're going to have 6 days to kind of get their legs, But what I immediately, I don't know what I should say immediately, but I want to flash back, not to bring back bad memories.
Oh goodness!
But the 2009-2010 season, and I don't know if you guys will remember the specifics of this, and I brought this up because I knew they were really good. I couldn't remember if they were undefeated or not, but they were. So that was the year, obviously, Robbie, Juwan, they had Chris Kramer, they had Etuan Moore, really good team. In the preseason, they had beaten number 9 Tennessee. They had beaten Wake Forest in the Big Ten ACC Challenge. They won at Alabama, which was a good team at the time. Mm-hmm. They had beaten West Virginia at home, waxed a really good West Virginia team.
And West Virginia was good.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that was it was at the day after New Year's I think.
Yeah, it was. I think it was New Year's Day.
It might have been New Year's Day.
Yeah, we were watching that while I had a friend over who was like wanting to watch college bowl games, and we're like, yeah, after this.
Yeah, after the Purdue game.
Yeah,
I honestly might have been in attendance at that game. I know around that time I went to a Purdue West Virginia game. I don't. Was that at home?
Yeah, it was at Purdue.
I honestly, I can't confirm that because I was really little, but I might have been in attendance at that game.
Oh, look at him bragging.
Look at that. Yeah, you were there for one of the best seasons ever. So, the reason I bring this up is that was largely thought to be one of the best Purdue teams that Painter had at the time, that Purdue had probably had at the time.
Yeah.
They then went on a 3-game losing streak to Wisconsin, Ohio State, and I remember this one vividly. They lost on the road at Northwestern because I remember thinking they had lost 2 games. Oh, they got a get-right game here against Northwestern. And they did not play at all. Like they were the whatever they were ranked at the time.
I think they were 5th at the time.
Yeah, 5th. Okay, so yeah, they were a top 5 team, didn't play at all like it, and got beat. Then they went on and they lost the regular season. They lost 1 more game the rest of that regular season. The reason I bring that up is because this schedule to me, at some point, I don't care how deep or talented they are, it's going to catch up with them.
Oh, sure.
And so if they lose 2 in a row or 3 in a row, I don't think they'll lose 3 in a row, but if they lose 2 or 3 out of 4 or something, it's not time to hit the panic button. It's not time to look at roster adjustments and lineup changes and all that stuff. These things tend to happen. Now, obviously, that team was centered because Robbie got hurt late in the season, but if he didn't, they were going to go to the Final Four. I stand firm on that. I don't know if they would have won it all, but they would have got to the Final Four.
I agree.
So we look at the schedule and we talk about it. There are some rough stretches where you could have had the best team in college basketball history is not going to go undefeated. So, like, just throw that idea out the window. There are too many teams that are good in the Big Ten. You got to do too much travel in the Big Ten. I guess I just wanted to bring up the point, like, even some of the really good Purdue teams have had their struggles where they lost 3 in a row or 3. I think when Purdue won the Big Ten in 22-23, they lost 3 out of 4 at one point. Those things tend to happen. Just please, for the love of God, don't go to Twitter and get post happy.
Yeah, because you know what, like you said, even the best teams, and I look through this roster for Purdue and just see absolutely talent everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to talk about this a little bit later. The rotations and things of how Coach Painter's going to figure that out. I'm better him than me, but. But this lineup, you're going to stumble somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And if they don't, my goodness, you've got to say Purdue was one of the best teams ever. This is one of the best teams ever to play a season. If they do happen to go 40-0, but yeah, it's gonna happen. I've joked around with Grant, and I've even joked it with you. 40-0. That's what's going to happen.
Right.
But I'm not. That's tongue in cheek. That's me joking around. There's going to be a stumble somewhere. Even the 72-10 Bulls lost 10 games.
Right.
So yeah, it's but which is the most concerning stretch? Is it that 5-game stretch, including the West and the 3 final after or following that, or is it that 6 of 8, and then all of a sudden you play those 3 right back to back to back, Michigan, IU, and Michigan State? Then, which is more concerning?
I tend to think the travel is going to be the most concerning because I think, I think it's a benefit to get Michigan, Indiana, and Michigan State at home. Michigan State has not played well at Mackey Arena recently.
No.
Michigan got ran out of the building last year. Indiana's obviously had their struggles. They played pretty well last year, even though
last year they did, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, playing 4 games or playing 5, that 6 and 8 stretch, but particularly those 4 road games and 5 games is the 24th or the 20th. The 24th, the 27th, the 1st. That's not like there's no time for a break there. Like that's where I think if they have a situation where they lose 2 or 3, like if they go 2 and 3, I still think you're going, okay, we're in pretty good shape. We didn't go 0-5.
I agree.
And I don't think they're going to go 0-5 in any stretch. They're too good. But I think you could go 2 and 3 and people are probably questioning, but I think even if you go 2-3, you come out of it and you say, okay, how do we respond? And if they respond well with wins over Oregon and can get wins on the road against Nebraska and Iowa, all of a sudden you're back in the driver's seat.
Grant, on going off of what Dustin just said, if a win against USC and a win against Illinois, but you lose the other 3, are you still happy with that 5-game stretch then?
I don't know if I would say happy.
I'm saying
like
you're not like woohoo, we lost
like
3 games,
awful,
but
right.
Yeah.
It's not like, like this is the end of our season. Our shot at the Big Ten is over. I think he's definitely right. Like if you can get 2 of those games, that keeps you afloat, and then you can bounce back with, a couple 3 wins, Oregon, Nebraska, Iowa, and bounce back, then you're good. I think definitely an ideal situation, you don't go 2-3, you go 3-2, 4-1, or whatever. But yeah,
they're going 40-0. They're going to be 5-0 in that stretch.
Right. So I definitely think like if you can get 2 of those games, it's enough to keep you afloat in that stretch that then you can finish it out and still win the Big Ten and be fine and still get 1 seeds, all of that. It's not going to like start damaging your overall season when it comes to the postseason. I wouldn't say happy. I think Purdue is capable of doing better than 2-3 in that stretch.
Sure.
But yeah, I think understandably like that keeps you afloat and is sufficient to then move you along.
Let's say it this way. You go 0-5 in that 5-game stretch, you'll have people hitting panic button. They go 1-4, you're going to have people still hitting the panic button somewhat quickly. You go 2-3 and you're like, could be worse.
Yeah. I think it probably depends. If they were to lose, let's hypothetically, I'm going to say, let's say they lost to UCLA, Illinois, and Indiana back to back to back. Then I think people are hitting the panic button.
Yeah.
I think it depends on how those losses come.
Yeah.
The one thing that I'll say is during that 5-game stretch, at the very least, there's not a lot to like about that, but at least the Indiana game is a quasi home game. And I only say that Assembly Hall is a very tough place to play. It's loud. Their fans are obnoxious and I mean, in a good way for them. But that means that you're done at UCLA on the 20th. You're going to be in the state for the 21st through, I don't know how planes work. So the 29th, 30th of January. So you're going to be at least at home for a while before you make that trip out to Maryland. So it's not like you have to fly, to Indiana. You basically, that's going to be a day trip or an overnight trip. Right.
Yeah. That's a bus trip there. You're not getting on a plane for that.
Right.
Or if you are, it's you're not even in the air that long. You're not even in the air that long. So the Boilers then wrap up, like we stated, at Ohio State, at Northwestern. Always kind of put a little check mark next to Northwestern when you're playing them in Evanston. I do anyways. And then you wrap it up with Wisconsin on March the 7th. Overall, let's put it over under 3 losses in the Big Ten. What are you taking? Over or under?
Golly, that's perfect number right there.
Yeah.
I would I would probably go over on 3. Because I think 4 is more likely. I think during that stretch we talked about, they're probably going to go 3-2. And I don't know. You asked me where the other 2 losses are going to come from. I don't feel great about it, but I think the Big Ten's too good and there's too much travel. So I would go over, but I will not. I mean, nobody in this room is going to be angry if I'm wrong.
Right.
Well, I could say over under 3.5. That way you could say it's going to be 3 or 4.
I would see if you put it at that. I think I'd go under.
You'd take the under?
You take 3.
Because I think they would lose again. We'll see. I think they'll lose 2 of those games in that 5-game stretch, and I think they'd probably lose 1 more somewhere along whether that's on the road at Iowa. Maybe they do drop that first game to Rutgers. Maybe they fall to Indiana. I don't know. They've had trouble at Ohio State too.
Yeah, they have.
One thing we haven't even talked about yet. I'm not so sure how they fare at Wisconsin.
That's a good point.
Big Ten game back on the road. That's a game I feel like Purdue tends to struggle with, the first one back. And Wisconsin's not going to be a bad team this year. And Madison's a tough place to play. So I wouldn't be surprised if, either Wisconsin or Rutgers, one of those early road games ends up being a loss. They go 3-2, like you said. And then I think at Iowa will be a tough game too, because Iowa's put together a solid roster. And Carver Hawkeye, if the season is going decently strong by Iowa standards, that can be a tough place to play too. With a guy like Bennett Sturts playing, I can see Carver Hawkeye rocking for that game, especially on a Saturday, and Purdue potentially having some trouble there. So all it takes is those 4, and there's 4 losses.
I would also say to that point, that was a really good point. The Wisconsin one coming back in January, that's going to be an interesting game. That's a one to highlight. The other thing I'll say is I don't know when students will return, but the Big Ten did do Purdue a favor because those first 2 home games in January are against Washington and Penn State, and that's probably you don't want to play Michigan or Indiana or Illinois in those when students aren't on campus. Yeah, so I think again, I don't know when I would assume they might be back that weekend of Saturday the 10th, so maybe they'll be there for that game. But I remember covering the Nebraska game last year, and it was maybe the 8th or the 9th of January, and students still weren't there. So I think that they I don't want to say they lucked out, but the scheduling gods were with them on that front.
Well, as a current college student, I would expect the first day of classes to be January 12th, which, like you said, they could potentially be there for the Penn State game, but probably not Washington.
Right.
That's a good point, though.
I'm going to go under on 3.5 or 3. I'm going to go under. I think they play a little bit better in some spots, and maybe they go 4-1 in that 5-game stretch, and they stumble maybe one other place, like maybe Ohio State or something. But I'm confident in what they're doing and with their personnel, which we're going to start talking about here shortly. I'll take the under on both.
So this is just Big Ten, right? Do you think?
Yeah, I was just talking Big Ten on that.
Let me ask this now: do you think they'll drop a non-conference game?
Looking at, I think if they play Texas Tech in the Baja Mar finals, potentially they could lose that one. I don't know that I would say I would say no on everyone else. So maybe Texas Tech if they play them.
Yeah, I would circle the Alabama game because I think that one's going to be. I think that'll be interesting. I don't know that they're going to be as good as they were last year. Certainly, playing the exhibition at Kentucky is going to help Purdue prepare for that atmosphere. But that, to me, I think Texas Tech. Yeah, I think Texas Tech could give them a lot of trouble, and I would circle that Alabama game.
So those two
I agree.
are. Yeah.
Well, I was going to say I agree with the Alabama game, especially because that to me is also a revenge game where Purdue took them down as number 2 in Mackey. Now Alabama gets them on their home court, can do the same kind of thing because Purdue will be 1 or 2 at that point, I would imagine. So yeah, I think that Alabama game out of all their non-conference games is the most likely to lose, along with Texas Tech.
So I think we're looking at, for me, 3 or 4 losses going into the Big Ten tournament. Overall, period. That's overall record. So. But that's for me, and I could be way wrong. I just with all these, there's some really, really good teams, but you know what? The Boilers are really, 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 really good. And I mean they only produce at 75% of what we expect. I think they're still one of the best teams in the country.
I would say too, it's a little bit harder now because you don't know what all teams have to offer. And just because Donovan Dent goes to UCLA doesn't mean he's going to fit in well. And I think he's a fabulous player, but I'm just saying, sometimes you do have chemistry issues. How many times did we hear, and this is legitimately not to pick on Indiana, but how many times did we say, look at their roster, look at who they brought in, and you would expect it to be a top 3 team in the Big Ten, probably a top 15 team in the country, and they didn't even make the tournament the last 2 years.
Dustin, they were voted to be number 2 in the conference last year, and look at where they finished. Yeah,
my old boss pushed me to put them at number 2 in the power rankings to start the year, and I was like, I don't think so, but
no. But look at that. They just underachieved greatly.
And so that could happen to other teams. So we're just speculating. We're basically taking each team at their best. without really knowing. This isn't like the old days where you know who's coming back, who's not, what to expect.
Right.
So it can be difficult to project.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, we've spent a good portion of time on that, but let's talk about a couple of other topics that we had on our docket. Analyst Jon Rothstein made a bold prediction for the Boilermakers this year. Either one of you is free to respond to this, but he made a prediction about CJ Cox. And guys, I've said it multiple times on the show. Tom Izzo said the biggest jump that a player makes in his college career is from freshman to sophomore. It's exactly what CJ Cox is doing. And Jon Rothstein thinks that this could be a huge year for CJ Cox.
Yeah, my only beef with it is I'd like to know what he means by breakout. I certainly think CJ will be a more consistent player, but if I may say this, I think CJ Cox had his breakout year. Like, he went off for 23 against Nebraska. He had 11. He had probably the most important 11 points in that Alabama game.
Yeah,
to get them to a win. Like, so I understand maybe he's not a household name across the Big Ten or in college basketball yet. So if that's what he means, then maybe, because I do think he'll be more consistent. I actually think Jakari Harris has the better chance to be the breakout player, just because I felt like I don't want to say untapped potential, but I think he was thinking too much at times during games. And I feel like, based on what Matt Painter said, based on what we've seen out of practices and stuff, it feels more natural. Like, he seems like the one where the game is slowed down the most. So the only reason I'm putting Jakari in that spot is because I think CJ's already had his breakout year.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess my thing I would add to that too is, it's like, we heard similar things about like Miles Colvin and Camden Heide last year. And to me, for them, they were supposed to take those leaps because they were supposed to step up and fill roles that were being left open for them. People expected them to be potential starters and to really take those leaps. CJ Cox, they're expecting to be a starter, but you also have Omer Meyer, Jakari Harris, plus the three guys coming back, your big three and your bigs. To me, the opportunities, like, he's not expected to take as big of a role necessarily as what Heide and or Colvin were expected to take last year and to help produce for the team. Now, he could still be a starter and be a great player. I'm not saying he couldn't, but to me, there was more. Purdue was relying on more of a Colvin or a Heide last year, and they didn't take that step that we kind of expected them to take. Cox, on the other hand, I just feel like he's supposed to be more of a role player, even as a starter. And to Dustin's point, he already had a great season, so it's like, how much can he really break out when you have the basketball is going to be in the hands of a lot of other players for the majority of the time? I'm not sure I think he will be a good player, but I'm not sure if it'll be the kind of breakout that you would expect from a comment like that.
Is it possible for him to not be a starter but still have a breakout season? Like, if Meyer, blows up and just is markedly better and needs to be in that starting lineup, can Cox still be effective and have a breakout season?
So maybe we're spoiled by this, and I'm going to build off of Grant's point, because there's so many different players where I don't know just if CJ's more consistent, but I don't know if his numbers are going to reflect it, because you have so many different. So to this point, the reason Trey Kaufman-Renn had a breakout year was because Zach Edey's not there. So he gets a majority of those touches. So if you want to say CJ Cox is going to be a breakout player because his production is going to increase, I don't think that's true. And that's not a knock on him. You've got Braden Smith, you've got Trey Kaufman-Renn, Fletcher Loya. Now you got Oscar Clough in the post. You've got some other guys around. You got Omer Meyer, and obviously you're still battering with Liam Murphy. You're still battering with Jakari. So I just don't think. Yeah, see, Antoine West.
Yeah.
So you're battling with a lot of guys. So I don't know that his production's going to go up. What if you were going to say CJ's going to have a breakout year? I feel like next year would be the year to say that, because maybe his production goes from 6 or 7 points a game to 18 or 19 points, because that's what they're going to need from him. I just don't know. Again, this is to Grant's point. There's too many good players on this team for him to make a major jump in production. But if you can say, can a breakout player be consistent? I mean, you know what I mean? Like, he can be more consistent, more efficient, but I don't know that is like, oh my God, where did CJ Cox come from? I felt like he had that moment last year.
Yeah, I don't disagree. And I agree on your point. Excuse me, that I see more potential with Jakari Harris being that breakout player this year than CJ Cox. And it's because, and the reason why I ask, can you be a breakout and lose your starting spot? I don't know that CJ Cox is going to start most of the season. Now, could he? Absolutely, he could. But Grant and I kind of talked about this, and Grant, you can talk a little bit about this as well, is we kind of feel that eventually Meyer's going to be that starter at the 2. And it's gonna bump Lawyer to the 3. And Grant, correct me if I'm wrong in saying that, but we kind of talked about that and came to that thought, I thought anyways last week, that Meyer's going to make it impossible for him not to be in the starting lineup, we think.
I'm kind of basing this too off of what you're hearing from the players and from some of the coaches and how they're kind of treating Meyer. Like, it sounds like he is trying to play as an off guard too. Like, that's the idea for this season, is he needs to be able to play that. And in my mind, if he is focusing on playing the off guard at the 2 spot, it's with the idea that he'll be playing next to Braden Smith. If he's playing next to Braden, to me, it's like they want him to be at the point where he can start. And then you can play him off of Braden. If he was going to be off the bench, it would be more to spell Braden. It's kind of how I read it a little bit, which is what makes me think, okay, they're looking for Meyer to start most of the season. Obviously, we talked, I feel like, earlier in the summer, and we thought that CJ Cox was more likely to start. And I think at least beginning of the season, that could definitely be the case.
Agree.
And I think Purdue would be fine in either situation. It's just based off what people were kind of talking from what I read and from what I heard from coaches and players and whatnot, it sounds like they are kind of preparing for Omer to potentially take a starting role.
And maybe I'm wrong. I said that I also think it has to depend on what they see defensively, because if Meyer has a deficiency, it's on the defensive end, and that's where Cox takes, it flourishes in that. So, your thoughts, Dustin?
Yeah, man, we could legitimately do a 3-hour podcast because this stuff is so interesting to me. So Matt Painter, after the first day of practice, he did kind of to that point said, the thing that helps us with Omer Myers, it's going to take some of the pressure off of Braden and some of those other guys because we do have that secondary ball handler. So that's interesting to be. Man, I'm conflicted on whether I think he's going to start or CJ Cox is going to start. And this is the reason why I still think you could probably split minutes between CJ and Omar at the 2 and get Braden some rest. But Braden's still going to play a lot. So I think Braden played 38 to 40 minutes pretty much every game last season. I think he averaged 38 and a half minutes, if I'm not mistaken. Right. So let's just pretend this is to do easy math here. Let's say CJ plays 20 minutes at the 2, Omer plays 20 minutes at the 2. You could then, in those 5 minutes, maybe Omer gets the extra 5 minutes to relieve Braden, and he's playing alongside CJ. So it's possible that Omer plays more than CJ, but he's not a starter. Similar to what Mason Gillis did with Trey Kaufman-Renn during that 23-24 season, where Mason was the more impactful player, I think you could say, and could do more, but he just wasn't a starter. You guys make a good point. I legitimately don't know what's going to happen. And that's why this whole, this lineup and this entire, just getting to the season excites me because there's so many different combinations. It's like a Rubik's Cube.
Well, it's almost like he could throw a dart at a dartboard and say, this is my starting 5, and they're going to do well. You know what I mean?
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a good point, too. Like, just because they want Omer to be able to play the 2 and to do it well doesn't mean he's going to start at the 2, right? Like, so they could definitely put CJ Cox at the 2, Braden at the 1, still with the idea that Omer needs to be able to play the 2 in order for him to be able to play legitimate minutes and to make the most impact on the team. Doesn't mean he's going to start there. So, I think, they still probably don't know exactly what they're going to do. the bottom line is Purdue's going to be in good shape regardless of who's taking that starting spot because
and we
they're
still
all
have
good
question
players.
marks on the rest of the roster too.
Right.
Like there, Antoine West Jr. Is he playing? Is he redshirting? Is he demanding more minutes? Like we don't know what that is, And again, I'll say it like we've said every time. We have no reason to believe that he's going to redshirt, but there could be a possibility that they look at this guy and say, we gotta have you sit out a year.
I feel like there's only one player on this team that I think I would feel comfortable saying is probably going to redshirt, and that would be Raleigh Burgess.
And that's what
I don't know how he's going to be able to carve out minutes. And I think he's a really good player too. I think he in time will be able to do a lot of different things. I just don't think the minutes are there because I think Jack Benner's going to require he's going to play. So then Liam Murphy, Trey Kaufman-Wren, Oscar Clough, Daniel Jacobson, all of those players in that. I don't know where you're going to cram Raleigh Burgess into that game. So I think he's the most likely to redshirt. Antoine West is another fascinating one because when you watch him play, he is like, I don't want to say a better version of CJ Cox, but I mean, he's basically a taller version of CJ Cox. He can defend really well. He's incredibly confident. He's built. I don't know, man. It's just, I'm glad I don't have to come up with this lineup.
I better him than me, I really, because I don't know where I would go. Like this is a legit problem. And we're going to talk just a couple of minutes about the top 40 list that came out just recently. You have all these players that we have question marks because we don't know. They're an unknown entity right now of what they're going to give right now for the Boilermakers. There's, we just don't know exactly what they're going to give. And then, but if they produce what we think they could or what they show that they could, we need 600 minutes in a game to be able to give these guys the amount of minutes that they need, Yeah. It's amazing.
Yeah, I don't remember it. I remember some really good Purdue teams. I don't remember a team that was this good and this deep, or that we expect to be this deep.
No, not at all. Have I ever seen this come from a Purdue team? Like, oh, we're loaded. This is like triple loaded. We've joked around, and even Matt Painter said, when they scrimmage the losing team, that's a Sweet 16 team right there.
Yeah.
That's not a joke. Look at the roster and you're like, that team's good enough to make it to the Sweet 16, and they're the second team. It reminds me of the statement back when UCLA was in its heyday with John Wooden. The freshman team beat the varsity because freshmen couldn't play on the varsity team. They beat them, and they said, UCLA is number 1 in the country and number 2 on campus. That legitimately could be the Purdue team right now. Like the second team could beat that first team any day, and just it's crazy to think about. So, well, we're running low on time, but we can talk about the last topic that we were going to cover just real lightly because it kind of did catch me off guard a little. SportsGrid put out a list of top 40 players in college basketball entering the 25-26 season. Number 2 and number 3 guys on this list, we expect Braden Smith and TKR. Now there is a second Braden Smith on this list. He's the Gonzaga guard. Yeah. But number 40, Oscar Clough, one of the top 40 players in college basketball entering into this season. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think Braden and Trey speak for themselves, so I'm not going to talk about that. I think part of me wonders how much with Oscar Clough that's the Purdue factor, in the fact that he averaged 17.5 and 12.5 last season, and Matt Painter wants him on the team. Well, he's going to be one of the top players, and he was one of the most productive. So I think that was a factor, but I have not seen him play yet. I'm looking forward to seeing him play, but it seems like I can see him being one of the top 40 players in the country, but maybe his numbers aren't as good as they were last season just because of what we talked about with CJ Cox and everybody else on the roster. He fits so well what Purdue lacked last year. And, I can't really speak to top 40. I was surprised to see him. I would have thought Fletch would have been on that list before. But, I think that speaks to probably a little bit of the production he had last season, and then a little bit of that. Well, if he's playing for Purdue and he's a big guy, Matt Painter's going to get the most out of him. So imagine what he'll be able to do in a Purdue uniform.
Yeah, that's kind of how I see this too, is because Purdue's the best preseason best team in the country at this point. It's easier to move Oscar Clough up there. He averaged really good numbers a year ago and then is going to play on the best team of the country, but those two things haven't happened at the same time. And I think when you look at them both separately, you're like, wow, it's really good. But like, he averaged the numbers against much lower level competition, and now he's playing for a great team, but his production probably won't quite look the same. But also to the Fletcher Lawyer point, that was my big thing, is how can Oscar Clough make this list but not Fletcher Lawyer, when it's pretty clear, at least in the Purdue circle, that they have a big three: Fletcher Lawyer, Braden Smith, Rakoff, and Wren. And then you have like guys like Oscar Clough that are going to fill those starting roles, be really important to the team, but like they're not seen as one of the three best players on this team. And yet he makes this list and Fletcher Lawyer doesn't. So I'm not saying that that's 100% wrong. Like, Oscar Clough might end up being a better player than Fletcher Lawyer. And that's not to say either one of them isn't as good as they should be. It just means Oscar Clough is playing really good basketball and is even better than what we thought he was going to be. But for a preseason list, when you're looking based off what they've done the last 3 years, I think Fletcher Lawyer needs to be on that list if Oscar Clough is on the list.
There are times.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, there are times when I feel bad for Fletcher because I feel like he gets lost in the mix. Mm-hmm. It's like, yep. I mean, he's a great player. He's been one of the most efficient three-point shooters in college basketball. Purdue's not where they are without him. And by the way, agree. He is, I don't know about without question, but last year and this year, he's the vocal leader. And I don't know if that's being talked about enough. Like, when Matt Painter says we have issues communicating, he's not talking about Fletcher. Fletcher is the vocal leader, and that's so important. And so that's why I think maybe he doesn't get the postseason accolades or the preseason recognition that we think he deserves. But that's why he's so important to this team, because they have some personalities, but Fletch has been pretty consistent in his leadership ability, especially last year and then into this year.
So he's the vocal leader, but when it comes to like press conferences and stuff, he kind of holds back and doesn't speak. So well,
Braden doesn't either. Braden's interviews are much shorter.
Oh yeah. But think about this. You have our big three, right? We know about the big three. We just talked about, Fletch and, TKR and Braden. If CJ Cox has a breakout season, like Rothstein has said, and Oscar Clough is the 40th best player in the college game, 40-0 is not an unusual or too bold of a prediction, I don't think.
Yeah, here we go.
No, but think about
your hate mail when they lose to Sam.
Right. That's right. But to think about, we have this big three. They're returning 86% of their scoring from last year, and then by the way, one of those guys that was a starter, somebody thinks he's going to have a breakout season. Whether he's right or not, it doesn't. The talk is that Purdue's got a loaded starting five if you look at just the five that are considered probably the starters coming in, because CJ Cox is going to be considered it and Clough's going to be considered a starter in most people's worlds.
Imagine if you're an opponent, it has to be demoralizing. I have changed my stance on this. I think Oscar Clough is going to start at center. But just imagine you can't get a rebound, and then all of a sudden, we're going to bring in the 7'4" guy who can block everything at the rim, and it was a lob threat and can run the floor really well.
And he can shoot threes.
Yes, that's what I was going to say. Trey Kaufman-Red said Daniel Jacobson's going to shoot a lot of threes, and I'm just sitting here like, what? Legitimately. Okay, and maybe this will be how we kind of round out the show. Let me tell you how you're going to run your show here, Sam.
That's fine. That's fine. Tell me. Guide me, Yoda.
I don't know what this team can't do. And a lot of people talk about like, well, they lack athleticism. First of all, I'm not sure that's entirely true. Second of all, they had athleticism with Miles Colvin and Camden Heide, and they didn't get what they needed. This team is so fundamentally sound, and guys know how to do their job, and they all have very specific roles.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think the athleticism part matters. And I don't think that the athleticism I don't think they're the most athletic team in the country, but people talk like this team is a bunch of like 1950s players wearing the short shorts, running up and down the court.
Smoking cigarettes at halftime.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm like, this team is still pretty athletic. You guys understand that, correct? Like, it's not a bunch of ollies from Hoosiers out there missing layups.
Dribbling off his foot.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at their starting lineup, especially in the backcourt, you look at like Braden and Fletch, and you're like, okay, how do those guys stack up with some of the NBA talented guys that some of these other top teams are going to have, like Duke, Kentucky, even like Houston? But for one thing, those two guys have shown they can play basketball with those top NBA studs, no matter how athletic they are. Also, Antoine West is very athletic and is starting to look so much more playable. At the beginning of the season, we didn't really count on him for anything. And like, obviously he wouldn't count toward the athleticism if he's not going to play, but that's starting to look differently. Bakari Harris and CJ Cox are looking really good. They have athletic players that are starting to look more playable that, yeah, if you just look at the five that are going to probably be their starting five, it doesn't look like they have a lot of athleticism. But if you look deeper into the, 6 guards that can play and the other bigs that can step in and play, like all of these guys actually do have athleticism, so they don't lack it. They're going to play a little bit more. And the guys that don't have athleticism have shown that they are tough enough, skilled enough, smart enough to be able to outplay the guys that are athletic, even if they fall into those situations.
I'm baffled at how, like, this is getting, as we get closer to the beginning of the season and practice, or in games starting, it's getting more and more like ridiculous in a good way. Like this is just getting ridiculous. And that's what I hope that Matt Painter and the coaches are able to work out enough minutes for those players to be happy. And then anybody that's not happy with their amount of playing time realizes after this year, there's plenty of minutes to come out. You know what I mean?
Yeah. 5 guys are gone at least.
At least.
I think, well, 6 if you count Sam King. Yeah.
Yes, 6. So, I mean, there are minutes that are coming open very, very soon. So hopefully that's enough to keep most of this roster, if not all of it, here.
I want to say one last thing, too, and this is to everybody listening. I get really irritated when people say, well, it's all about the NCAA tournament. It's all about the Final Four. Watch this team from start to finish and enjoy it, because you don't know how many teams like this you're ever going to get. So it's not just about the NCAA tournament or the Final Four. Watch every game throughout that you can. I mean, if you have other obligations, obviously. Right. But don't just be one of those fans that's like, well, it's all, I don't care what they do in the regular season. Oh, okay, what they won the Big Ten, they should have. Like, appreciate what Matt Painter and this staff has built, what these players have done, because Purdue has built kind of this, I don't want to say dynasty yet because they haven't won a national championship, but as close to one as you can get. Appreciate it while it's here, because as we've seen with a lot of other sports, Nebraska football, Indiana basketball, there's a lot of others that have had a lot of success and then it just kind of vanishes. So appreciate every game you get with this type of team.
Yeah, especially with the climate in which they are doing this in now.
Right.
And able to keep a majority of their core around in a world where a lot of people are chasing the cash or, better
playing
situations.
Time. Yeah.
So, all right. Well, we did some overtime. Gents. But you know what? I think Dustin was right here. We could have talked another couple of hours about all this, because there's just so many caveats and so many what if statements that you could make that just absolutely make this a topic that you couldn't get tired talking about even. So, but thanks so much for joining us on this week's episode of Boilermaker Lounge. Dustin Schutte from SI, thanks so much for coming in. It's always a great time talking Purdue hoops with you, so I appreciate it greatly.
Absolutely. It's always fun to come on and talk with you guys.
All right. Well, thanks again so much. For Grant Flora, I'm Sam Sprunger. We'll see you next week.